Hey Jasmin. Hey, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm well, doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Are you back in Australia or are you still stateside?
Yeah, I'm in Australia. So I
Australia.
returned, what was it, a few days ago or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Your clock has got to be all mismatched, huh? Are you jet lagged still?
You know what? I'm not. It just kind of feels like it's more to do with like coming back and not being used to the environment. But I slept well on the plane, so that's a surprise. But
Good,
yeah.
good, good, good. Well, I'm glad you're able to take some time. We could do this. These interviews really serve, kind of the greater good because we have an expression where we say what is most local is most global, right? Like whatever is kind of going on inside of our head and inside of our heart, we tend to think is just kind of our own personal experience, but usually it very much mirrors what so many other people are going through too. So just by you
Mm,
kind of sharing a little bit about your experience is going to help other people kind of feel seen and feel heard and like help them, get some insights as to how they can make some changes also. So yeah, we
mm,
appreciate it quite a bit. The first question for you is, you've kind of been in my team's ecosystem for a little period of time. I don't know exactly when we first got connected, but I think it was quite a while ago. Can you kind of describe what was kind of like everybody tends to have like that sort of like really low moment or low experience right before they seek help, like they're, at least for me, right? Like I was hospitalized, I was suicidal, I was on medication, like it was this whole thing. And then I started looking for answers. And like, can you just kind of set the stage for us of where were you at kind of before you encountered our tools and our methodology? Like what was really going on in life for you at that time?
I was really emotionally drained. I was not living I was not living within a great frame of mind, essentially. The thing is, I think I was viewing myself in the lens of someone else. In this case, was my ex or exes. It was, other people. And I get it. We're not going to have like a very perfect life where we meet all these wonderful people, but I think I was just really letting someone else's opinions influence how I view myself. So
Mm, mm,
that was exactly what I was sort of emotionally thinking and feeling as.
mm.
So I think that's what changed for me because I just remember, like, in the best way I could, I just felt like my own self worth was down. And yeah, it was a very interesting time, to be honest. And I
Like,
think
do you mean
most
like
people,
your sense of self-worth was like dependent on their opinion and their approval? Is that what you mean?
yes,
Oh, okay.
yes, I would say so. Yeah.
And what had that been like going on and was that like a pattern in your relationships as well prior to that too? Like, had that been going on your whole life?
I think so, in a way, when I really think about it, because I think that I've learned some precious rules, but one of the things I learned recently, which I didn't really think about at the time, of course, because I was in that frame of mind, was that you don't have to be kind to everyone and you should only be kind to people who are kind to you. And I was like, that's true because I again, it might not necessarily be the case all the time because I know that people can do things sort of inadvertently because, they might have grown up in an environment where they were mistreated. But the point is that, yeah, you don't have to, yeah, show kindness to people who are not
Mhm.
reciprocating that.
So would you say like that was the main thing you were trying to figure out? Like maybe you didn't even have the question fully formed in your mind yet, but it sounds like the biggest thing you were struggling with was just like a lack of a sense of self-worth, right?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And then how did that like manifest? Like typically when people are feeling a low sense of self-worth, it manifests in different ways in their life. Some people go to like drugs or alcohol. Some people like, maybe stay in relationships with people they really shouldn't be with long term, or what was kind of going on in your life, like from feeling that lack of being enough on the inside?
I was not feeling very energetic. I was not necessarily sleeping that well. FYI, I had just stopped, taking recreational drugs. I had stopped drinking already at that point because, for more context, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this if they've come out of a situation, I just cut out a lot of people by that
Hmm.
stage. So I had made some, I'll give myself this, and the thing is, I probably didn't realize it, but I was a very brave and committed and strong person already because I'd already
Sure.
made some decisions
Sure.
to go, hey,
Yeah.
this is not cool. Like this is definitely not happening. Hell no. So of course, in my mind, I felt like I was just lonely and that no one was really there. But really, what it was just the start of something new. And I think I was reading something a while ago that, like, if you're feeling that way after making some significant choices, that it was in a way completely normal. It was the start of,
Hmm.
recovery, in regards to cutting out people who are not helpful and doing all those sort of things, if that makes sense. So
Yeah. So were the primary challenges you were dealing with, did they feel more like external or internal? Like what did you find really difficult when that sense of self-worth was not fully formed? Like did it manifest as career problems or just relationship problems or like, were there things in your life you were trying to make happen that were difficult to make happen?
I think there were things in my life that I was trying to make happen that were difficult to happen. It was a
Yeah.
lot of internal, because, like I said, in my mind, I was constantly thinking, obviously manifested in different words and different ways, different thoughts, I should
Yeah.
say, sorry, like that I was not worth this. And then, of course, that belief or whatever can manifest into different automatic negative thoughts. So
Yeah.
that was something that it's a lot, because I think the particular issue in my case, that automatic negative thoughts and anything related to that, was never really dealt with properly before. And as you can imagine, I think that's the reason why people do sort of escape from reality. And again, I'm being very fair because I think we all want to.
Hmm.
But some people do it by, yeah, taking things. And it does actually work because, I don't want to go into the science of that, but
Temporarily. Yeah.
yeah, so people do take things and then they're all like whatever. And so choosing not to do that anymore for obvious reasons actually was just this very challenging transition. And as anyone can imagine who's gone cold turkey on taking things,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a challenge. So I hope that anyone who is listening to this who's done that decision as well, that they know that it's a very empowering decision to do that. It doesn't matter how you feel when you
Right.
first stop,
Yeah.
whatever it is that you're doing, but it's a very strong decision. So people
Yeah.
should be awarded for that. Yeah.
So you mentioned these automatic negative thoughts. What were like the top two or three automatic negative thoughts that were really dominant at that time?
That nobody wants me around, and that I was a sad, weak individual at that
Hmm.
time. Yeah.
I think you and I got connected originally because of Joan, I think, had referred you or something. You had gotten referred to us. Usually by the time people encounter me or us or my team or whatever, they've already, kind of been around the block. They've heard a couple other things, they've done a couple other programs, they've gotten some help here or there. Just be, as honest as you possibly can. Like what sort of skepticisms, I guess, did you have? All right. Like if your friend came to you and was like, oh yeah, you gotta talk to this guy, like what was kind of running through your mind when you first kind of got introduced to us or maybe saw your first video where we're like trying to
Yeah.
figure out what all of this was about?
I think I was just caught up in this emotional vortex and in this. I think we talked about this way later down the line, but this distortion. So the
Hmm.
distortion of the circumstances and the distortion of self and even others. So I was under this, whatever we can call it, a virtual reality, even, but this virtual reality where everything that was going on in my head was, oh yeah, I'm suffering from a breakup, and and all this stuff is happening, and things aren't great, and because you're just sort of trapped in this emotional world. And I think when you explain the distortions tool, it made perfect sense because yeah, it does. And what I mean by that is at that time I was skeptical only because of those beliefs and how that would make me think and how that would make me think about whatever was happening. Could have been anything. It could have been what I thought about where I lived, what I thought about my parents, what I thought about, So in other words, like, yeah, I was just under this
So like
different reality.
you were
Yeah.
more of the belief that like nothing is going to work
Mm.
because this external thing has screwed me up. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I would say that. And
Yeah.
it was more than just a breakup for context. There was a number of other things going on. And I think that when you said something about it was actually in a video that you had created, like people constantly go on about how things should have been and they sort of imagine or reimagine it.
Hmm.
But when you think of it, when you separate yourself from the past, like you actually separate yourself and you see yourself as objectively as an individual, then in my case, that made me realize, hold on a second, why on earth would I like worry or even think to this degree about something that already happened, but more importantly, something that happened not by my accord, by someone else's. Like, I'm not in control of them. And in a way, I'm so glad because why would I want to feel like I was controlling? And again, I'm not trying to label anyone, but someone who clearly just makes negative
Right.
actions or negative decisions. It just felt like I had to disconnect or realize the truth for what it is, that I had
Yeah.
no responsibility for other people's poor choices.
So were you kind of in an attitude of like, so before you came to those realizations, those are all amazing
Yeah.
realizations. Before you came to that realization, were you kind of more of the attitude of like, there's no helping me, period? Like just whatever has happened to me, the breakup and these other things that are going on in my life, like I'm just kind of screwed. I'm like, being toyed around by the universe, I'll just have to see where like the chips fall kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say that's exactly what you just said. That's exactly the frame of mind that I
Okay.
had. Yeah.
Gotcha. I think that's a good learning moment for everybody because one of the phrases I'm sure I've used with you, I use it basically with every client, but we call it giving your power away, right? So it's like you unknowingly create belief systems where you basically say, well, I'm not in charge of this area of my life. This thing is in charge of that area of my life, whether it's the news or your parents or your partner or your job or whatever. I mean, during COVID, it was all about, the government and all sorts of things, right? Like people love to create belief systems where they externalize. And most times I think it's just I think it's coming from a good place. I think sometimes though people don't realize they're shortchanging themselves. I think sometimes we do it because if we're being very honest, sometimes we're being lazy and it's easier to externalize it instead of going, all right, well, I got to take responsibility. I got to step up. I got to figure this out. But usually I think it's just kind of like the smoke screen that the mind puts up. It's like, it's just easier for us to believe that it's this external thing than to deal with the messiness
Mm.
of doing the inner work, and like asking ourselves the tough questions. So what kind of made you decide like, okay, I need some help. I'm gonna get some help from this guy. Like, what was kind of that moment where you were like, okay, I'm gonna do this? Like, what tipped you over the edge, or was it something you heard or saw, or what?
I would say at the time, the really funny thing is, just as an FYI, the more I've progressed as an individual, I'm sure this has happened to a lot of people and clients, the less I remember about that frame of mind I had. It's really
Yeah,
weird. It's like
yeah,
I
it's like a
have
different
memory
person.
loss. So, but anyway, it's probably a good thing. It's probably good news,
Yeah,
actually. I think at the time, I was just like, you know what? Something tells me that this person might be able to help me because in reality, I don't like this emotional vortex that I'm in. And I'm not saying that I said that at the time, like out loud. Obviously, I still felt very whatever, like I was feeling very down still and caught up with
yeah,
all
of
those
course.
things that we were talking about. But there was a thought like that that really made me think, oh, well, actually, this isn't really that great. I think I'd like to see how somebody externally, somebody who can sort of explain the truth as it is could help me. And that's the thing, because I think we live sometimes, I say sometimes because it really depends on, I guess, the choices you make. We do live in a very subjective world. Like people can go on social media and they can easily judge people. Can You can meet people and then, you know what I mean? But the reality is, I think the more that you see things for what they are, the more that you'll actually
Yeah.
become aligned with who you really are. And then, therefore, you will become aligned and you'll start attracting people who are also on that same wavelength.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I'm going back even further in time when perhaps before I met those particular exes, or before, I was not quite under the impression that I had a lot of say and I had a lot of strength. And I'm not saying that's the reason why things occurred. I'm just saying it goes to show that if you are, and I've noticed this very recently with myself and other people, that the more that you see things for what they are, the more you understand things truly and
Hmm.
your values, the more you
Yeah.
tend not to get along with everybody just by default. Not saying that you have like arguments, it's more that you realize, okay, this person is not what quite aligned with me, but
Yeah.
this person is, or this thing that I could choose to do here, oh no, it's not quite aligned with me, but there's this. So you start seeing, yeah, all these different changes
Yeah.
happen. It's very interesting.
So, like, what has changed in your life as a result of using these tools that we've taught you and, getting some of these systems in place for you? What are some of the changes you've experienced, like internally or externally as well?
I think I've noticed that I'm very kind, or I'm getting very kind to myself. I'm becoming very kind to others. And again, of course, when I talk about kindness, I'm not necessarily talking about like, oh yeah, like, you know what I mean? Whatever, everything goes. But it's more
Not just
like,
like saying it.
yeah, I think you have to reserve judgment sometimes on a lot of things, but it helps because then instead of looking at everything subjectively, you start seeing the truth for what it is. And then I started realizing even now, and I'd go back in time even further because again, I think childhood is very important and it apparently develops us, later in life.
Yeah.
I started seeing things that in my past, instead of being like very traumatized by it, or something like that, I'd actually just be querying it and going, yeah, okay, so this occurred. Yeah, that all right. And then even internally, I started querying the thoughts I was getting and why I
Right.
was getting them. I felt what helps for me all the time is when I trace it down to the root. And again, it doesn't take long. Like usually people can remember the first time they were, I don't know, told something. And I'd say externally, I mean, it's still an effort. I won't lie about that. Sometimes I still find myself caught up in a loop and just thinking a lot and having automatic negative thoughts. But the point is, it's more about what you're doing, quite literally, like on a literal level. So I will catch myself, yeah, first of all, going into a thinking loop. But then when I'm not in that thinking loop, I find myself performing really well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
whether it's picking up a book, whether it's doing a job interview, for example, whether it's, going out and getting some exercise, whether it's just going out of the house and actually doing something, like I just find myself going, no, there's no time for thinking I'm going to stand up and go and do this. Because the reality is as well, I think this is for like 99.99% of things, that overthinking something does not change the outcome.
No. Well, not for the better, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And like you can put this in a professional context. If I was like my job is not what necessarily high stakes, but still, like let's just say I was dealing with a customer over the phone and it had to, like, because I work in insurance, if I just put that customer on hold and I just sat there thinking about all these negative thoughts, nothing would happen, quite literally. And yeah, nothing would happen. So why would it be any different for something else?
Right.
Yeah. And I
I
think,
think like so many of the things you're saying to me scream this one giant lesson, which is like, don't believe everything you think. Just being able to separate between, the noise that the mind is consistently pushing out and then what you actually let sink into the deeper level where you actually believe it and internalize it and use it as a guiding operating system for how you make decisions. So you've clearly like started to develop a massively better relationship with the mind and understanding that what the mind is telling you is not a representation of truth. So I think I love that. That's a huge skill that you've clearly gotten so much better at. That's great.
And it takes time. And I think the more you work on it, the more you actually discover I call it the why, because there's absolutely no way you were born with that thought. Would have had to come from somewhere. And then you start, again, it depends. Like I know for some people it can be very difficult to confront your past, but you're doing it in a compassionate way. You're going back and going, oh yes, there was this time that this happened. At least I now know the truth
Yeah.
because you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it is true because I think I don't know if this really applies to everyone, but I just remember even growing up with people who wouldn't do something because something happened before. Like someone had I was on camp when I was 13 years old, and I think one of the girls was terrified. In her defense, though, I found out later that she had an incident with her family while canoeing or kayaking. It
Sure.
makes sense. It comes from somewhere. You're not just innately like, oh, I'm scared of this. It had to have come from somewhere. So yeah, it's a very good discovery journey. When we truly know why, we can move on and we can make better decisions. So yeah.
Yeah. What would you say has been like the best singular moment in your life that you've had since you've done this work and like used the tools and put things in motion? Like, was there like a moment in a, maybe an interaction with somebody, like a friendship or a relationship or at work? Like, was there a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I would have responded to this totally differently, like a couple of months ago? Or, what would you say is like the best moment you've experienced since you've made these changes and done all this work for yourself?
There were quite a few. There were quite a few actually. Without sort of spelling any personal information, I remember having like interactions with friends or family, or, even interactions with meeting people for the first time or trying to go into the dating game. And instead of me being offended by anything that someone would say, I would just like, okay, they said that. There's something going on there. And again, it's not a judgment. It's just more like, because I think a lot of people default to, oh no, insert negative thought. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right, right.
so
It's like a knee
everything that
jerk. They get hooked. We call it getting hooked. It's like a fish hook.
yes, yes, exactly that actually. And
Mhm.
it still happens to me, but it's not really what it was like before. So I would just feel intrigued rather than like
Curious. Yeah, yeah.
and it made it much easier for doing a lot of things. So like I'm trying to transition in my career. So I never thought the other day I did an interview, I never thought how quick and easy that would have been. Because instead of overthinking anything they asked me, I just answered straight up. Next thing you know, they progressed me to the next stage. And I'm like, okay, that was easy. It's not that you're not thinking at all, but I
Hmm.
think the issue is people don't realize when they are in any state of mental health issues,
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
and how much overthinking is actually happening and how much it is really the opposite of productive. So you start thinking less and you start noticing all the things that you just are able to do. So yeah,
Yeah.
these interactions I've been having and the hobbies I started picking up again
Cool.
have been just really easy to do. Like I don't know how to explain it. You're just out there and you're being yourself, as
Yeah.
opposed to going out there and victimizing yourself and picking on yourself, because that's what I kind of think it is sometimes when you have all these thoughts. You're picking on yourself and so on and so forth. So that would probably be what I noticed.
Yeah.
Hopefully someone who's listening to this who understands what overthinking is, they'll know exactly what I mean.
When you're in that space where you don't feel enough, you become reactive to almost everything around you, right? And therefore your relationships suffer, your career suffers. And as you become reactive to everything around you and your mind is constantly evaluating, did I do this? Did I screw this thing up? Did I screw that thing up? Am I not good enough because of this? Am I not good? Like there's just so much mental clutter that it doesn't leave enough room or space for other stuff, joy, like the hobbies you were talking about. So it's like once you deal with those core underlying beliefs, like I'm not good enough, and you really take the journey transitioning that to actually I do like myself and I do love myself and my self-worth is not up for negotiation anymore. Not only do you no longer become reactive to everybody else and you're more centered, So you're more powerful in the universe, but now you've just got so much energy freed up. It's like a lightness, right? So like then everything that felt hard before now feels easier because you're just not battling all of
Mm.
those thoughts running through your mind all the time. So last question for you is people like when they first kind of enter our world, right? Like they'll watch a little video or they'll join our Facebook group or whatever. And rightfully so, like people are just kind of confused. Like they don't quite understand. They're like, okay, so is this guy a therapist? Are you teaching therapy? Like what is this thing? And so it's always challenging for me to kind of describe what the client experience is like. Like what I'll tell people, and I'm sure I told you this at the beginning, is like, this is not going to be like therapy. It's like a very
Yeah.
different experience from therapy. So I would just love for you to, as honestly as you possibly can, like just kind of describe, like, since you're, somebody I've worked with for months and we have these one-on-one calls, like what is it really like, to go through the process that I walk you through? Like how would you kind of describe it from the client experience so somebody might understand like whether it's really the right thing for them or not? Because I also make no apologies about making it clear like it's the right thing for some people, it's not the right thing for everybody.
I found that it was very empowering for me because I'm trying to best describe this as best as I can. So I think the reality is people go into therapy to get fixed. And I don't think this program or any of the tools is actually that. I think we're working on the self, right?
Mhm.
Like the person internally. So that's kind of what I thought. And I think the key distinction between the two is that a lot of the time when you're in therapy, it's not necessarily a bad thing, by the way. There's some really good psychologists out there. You are going in thinking, I have a problem or there's something psychologically wrong with me. And by the way, those things can be okay in a way, but I shouldn't say I think, I know that when people are experiencing hardship, that it's actually not something that's technically wrong with them. Like, does that make sense? Like, unless you had an actual problem, like I'm not trying to judge anyone, by the way, when I say this. I'm going to be very careful. Like, if you were seeing things or hallucinating, okay, great. But if it's just that you are having a negative patch in your life and that happens to manifest in internal issues, you don't have to fix yourself. It's more that you need to be redirected to show things for what they really are.
Mhm.
And the psychologist can do that, or they might not be able to. But I think it's because of the stigma around it, and I'm sure various other reasons. Because, like I said, I felt that this program was not about coming in and getting fixed. I think this program was about the truth, about discovering the truth for myself, and about learning the tools that will actually help. Because, again, with exceptions, like I was describing before carefully, you can go anywhere and you can get temporary solutions, which you said, that's what some of these things are, but that's not, that's temporary. You want to grow as a person, you want to know how things work. And this program helped me realize how things work and helped me realize
Yeah.
that all this thinking that I had was essentially just thinking patterns or trends that I had implemented in my life. And obviously, I'm accountable for myself and the choices I make, but that's essentially it. So, like, everyone's situation is different. I'm under the impression, the more that I'm working with the tools here, that I'm a responsible and accountable person. And I don't need to tolerate the behavior of things or people that I don't have any association with. Does that make sense? Because I think when people have trauma, they blame themselves. I mean, I know I have.
Mm-hmm.
When
Yeah.
someone's done something wrong, they like to buy someone, the person victimizing themselves, which again, this was something I did at least, was like, oh, it's my fault that someone
Mm-hmm.
hurt me. And I'm like, no, nowadays I'm like, you know what? It makes no sense, because for that to be true, that means you would have had to have been getting them or perhaps even controlling them to the point where they did do
Right.
X, Y, or Z, which is
Right.
not true either. So
Yeah.
it's interesting how the tools have just made me believe again in all the wonderful things that are there and realize that I have all this potential if I decide to use it.
I love that. And you're growing it and expanding it every day. What's really inspiring about you and your situation too. So I very deeply appreciate you spending some time kind of unpacking your experience, sharing some insights. There's a lot of good little takeaways for people to get out of this. Don't believe everything you think. Overthinking never makes anything better. Your self-worth does not need to be up for negotiation or contingent on other people's approval. Once you deal with the underlying internal big picture issues, everything else in life gets a whole lot easier. That in and of itself, those are hugely, hugely valuable things. So thank
Mm,
you so much for taking some time sharing your experience with the community. And we greatly appreciate it. We're excited to see where you keep heading from here.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been a very good experience. And yeah, I'm looking forward to more growth.
All right, Jasmine, I'll chat with you soon, okay? Take care for now.